I have not done a pork tenderloin video. I've done multiple pork loin videos, but I really don't think I've done a pork tenderloin video. Well, that's changing right now because I'm going to be making a spicy pepper rubbed pork tenderloin out on the Weber Kettle. So first thing I want to do is get this spicy pepper rub put together. It's only 4 ingredients. We have a teaspoon each of kosher salt and ground black pepper, a teaspoon of paprika, and half a teaspoon of red pepper flakes. Just going to put my lid on this bowl and shake. Honestly, I've found this is one of the best ways to mix up your rubs if you're using a bowl like this. Plus you get a little workout in your arm. And give this a quick taste. Nice. Nice little bit of heat on there. Salt, pepper, everything else. This is good. Let's get this on the pork tenderloin. What I have here are a couple pork tenderloins, kind of what you would get in a cryovac pack where they usually have 2 of them shoved together so it looks like one bigger one. This is what we have here today, so let's get this spicy pepper rub on it. I'm gonna start getting it on. We're gonna rub this all over. And if you want this spicier, you can add more pepper flakes, you can add some sort of chili powder to it. This is just about as much heat as I want on this because we're going to be pairing this with a sauce at the end. All right, these are ready. I'm going to get these in the refrigerator. They're going to sit for about 30 minutes in there just to kind of accept the seasoning while we go outside and get the Weber Kettle going. So I have the Weber Kettle set up with the slow and sear, probably about maybe a half full of charcoal, and I'm not lighting it in the traditional sense. I'm just getting everything going at once because the tenderloins aren't going to take that long to cook, plus I am going to do a sear on them. I'm going to do some slow and some sear. Get to use the slow and sear this time. Have a bit of foil on the one side to catch drips, my ambient temperature probe in there. All we're going to do now is wait for it to heat up. I am going to be adding some cherry wood right now because I want the smoke to actually start building before I get this tenderloin on there because it's not going to take a long time and I want to try and get a little bit of smoke flavor in the short amount of time that I have. Probably won't need to add any more wood during this cook. As I said, those tenderloins are going to cook fairly quickly. I'm going to get my lid on and start building up to some temp. My top vent right now is fully open, and my bottom vent is set at the 2/3 open mark. The kettle temp I'm shooting for today is 250 degrees. The final internal temperature that we're going to be going for on the tenderloin is 145 degrees. Somewhere around 120, somewhere around there, maybe 115 to 125. We'll be searing it really quickly and then checking the internal temperature to make sure we get to that safe 145 internal. Right now, just going to let this come up to temp, and then we'll bring our tenderloins out and get them on. Okay, the kettle temp is 265. It's run up a little bit. That'll moderate once we get these on there and adjust the vents if we need to. But let's get these pork tenderloins on. I'm going to put the smaller one towards the back here, and the slightly larger one just in front of it. Get my internal temperature probe in here. This is always iffy on these very thin cuts of meat, but it'll give you a gauge. So our internal meat probe is showing 48, which I know is high because these were in the refrigerator. So it's not in the exact spot, but I gotta tell you, in a piece of pork like this, it's so narrow, you're often not going to get the exact thing. So this is a guide. My guess is we're probably somewhere closer to 41 degrees. So we'll check it at the end to make sure we're at the safe temperature. Let's go ahead and get our lid on and start smoking. All right, that tenderloin is showing an internal temperature of 116 degrees, so I want to give it a chance to sear now. Put a little wing down here, get our temperature probe out. We're going to take the big one first. Just want to give it a chance to develop a little bit of color here. A little check here. Nice color on that. All right, we're going to move this back to the indirect side and sear our second one. All right, I'm going to move this one back indirect too. We're going to do a quick check with the instant read, see how we're doing. I'm going to check the littler one first here. Looks like we're looking at low to mid 130s on that one. This one's showing mid 130s, a little higher. It's been closer to the fire, so they're kind of evened out. Mid 130s. So I'm going to say another 7 or 8 minutes. And then I'll check them again. I'm not going to put the probe back in. I'll just be checking with the instant read. So let's get the lid back on. All right, it's been another 7.5 minutes. Well, let's see how we're doing. I'm going to check the big one here, because if the big one is done, the little one's going to be done. So you can see that. 139. If we're in the 140s, we're going to be fine, because there's going to be carryover heat. It's going to be wrapped in foil once we take it in for about 15 to 20 minutes while we make our sauce. So we are at 141.142. There's going to be plenty of carryover heat to take those other 3 degrees, so we are done. Let's get this inside, wrap it up, and make our sauce. All right, our pork tenderloins are resting in a pan covered in foil. Let's get the sauce going. I've got a half a cup of red wine here that I've got going over medium heat. To this, I'm going to add about a tablespoon of mustard. I'm going to be using a French mustard. You can use any kind you want. I prefer stone ground, some type of mustard like that. We're also going to add 2 tablespoons of brown sugar and about a tablespoon of fresh honey. I'm just going to start mixing this up in here. You want to make sure that mustard gets incorporated so it's not too lumpy in the sauce. And we're just going to let this simmer until it reduces. It's probably going to take 10 or 15 minutes here. Our sauce is reducing nicely. All right, I'm going to turn this burner off, let this cool slightly, and then we're going to get our pork loin out, dress it up, and have a taste. So here is our finished smoked pork tenderloin. I chose the big one to work with here. That spicy pepper rub on the outside, I can smell that. It smells terrific. So let's cut into it and see what we have. And I'm just gonna go dead center here. There we go. Just like that. Again, I don't like to always do the little push thing, but it is juicy. If you can see that there. Very nice. Not overcooked. Remember, solid pork products like roasts and loins and things like that are recommended to go to at least 145 degrees. It used to be much higher. Ground pork still is a higher temperature, but getting it to that 145 is perfect. You don't lose that juiciness. If you remember in the past, it was always, dried out pork, but being able to take it to that 145 is terrific. Let's cut a slice out of this. Oh, that looks good. And let's get a little bit of that sauce on here. So this is our sweet red wine reduction. Just thickened enough to give us a nice drizzle here. Just beautiful. All right, it's time to taste. I have been looking forward to tasting this pork tenderloin since I put it on the kettle. It smelled terrific while it was cooking. It smells terrific now. So let's see. Oh, all right, first thing, it is just so tender. The total cooking time out on the kettle, including both indirect, searing and indirect, was 45 minutes. We were right around 250 to 260 the whole time. That cherrywood smoke was rolling pretty good for about the first half hour. I gotta tell you, every flavor in this works. Nice little punch from that spicy pepper rub, and a really refreshing follow-up to that with that sweet red wine reduction. It just is so good. To me, this is about just below medium heat when you're talking about spice level. If you want it spicier, I definitely would add more pepper flakes or an actual ground chili powder into the rub. But I've got people who are going to be eating this who aren't really into the super spice. I could go for more spice, but I got to tell you, this is pretty terrific. Now, the tenderness, just so you can see, it just pulls apart. It's almost like a well-cooked brisket or chuck roast. And that's one of the really nice things about the tenderloin. Even the loin sometimes can get to that level of tenderness where you can pull it, but the tenderloin almost always, if cooked properly, will give you that pull-apart tenderness. So if you have a pork tenderloin, give it some time on the grill indirect, give it a sear, then let it finish up indirect, make a nice sauce for it, and you will end up with a tender, tasty piece of pork.